All right, cool. So we're recording. Uh, this is the first in a experimental Zoom interview.
Right.
We'll call it summer interview sessions. I don't know. Doesn't have to have it.
Yeah,
Uh, but I
sure.
thought since this is the first one, what we should do is spend a couple minutes just introducing ourselves and what we're going to do over the course of like four-ish, could be six,
Yeah.
could continue on uh
Mhm.
Zoom interviews. So you go ahead first and then
Okay.
I'll follow you.
Okay, great. So I'm Juan. I'm a graphic designer working primarily in identity and branding design. I've been working as a freelancer for 5 years, been in-house at agencies and independent marketing firms for 3 or 4 years now. And currently, I'm still freelancing, but looking for other very exciting freelancing roles, working with creatives, directors, anyone I can get my hands on, really.
Cool. Good. Uh Anything else to add?
Yeah, I would just like to add that, you know, when I first wanted to do this sort of connection or networking with people, I wasn't expecting such a forward and approachable group of people to keep reaching out to me and accepting my sort of invitations to speak or connect. So I'm just really looking forward to our conversations, what this might lead to in terms of guidance, mentorship, information, and overall apprenticeship, if you'd call it that. Not sure what you would refer it to as.
Yeah. Cool. Well, the community is good, so I would expect good people to stay in touch and reach out and continue the conversations.
Yeah.
Uh, Introduction wise, my name is Jason Schwartz. I am the creative director at Bright Break Great in Chicago, but with team members now global. I've been doing this for 24 years. BBG is 16
Mhm.
almost. Uh,
Wow.
and over that time, I've seen probably about four distinct phases of what's happening in the world, what's happening in design, uh, where we are with advanced with technology advancements and things like that. When you look back 25 years, mobile phones were new, no iPhones. You couldn't even use custom type on the web yet, things like that. So lots has changed. Lots have changed. Um, but I thought it would be good to kind of do a point counterpoint. We'd pick a topic for each 30 minutes, so it keeps us very limited, and we just kind of riff off of the topic and see where the conversation goes. So the first topic is go ahead.
Is time, where to allocate and prioritize your time, and when to know how much time you should be spending on particular tasks, projects, thoughts, and overall problem solving, I think.
So let's break this down and kind of go point by point, but let's talk a little bit about time just in general first. So let's say you have 5 years experience.
Yeah.
Have you noticed anything about time in particular that sticks out to you, or anything that you wanted to talk about, knowing that this is a topic that we're specifically calling out?
Yeah. I think particularly as a freelancer, what I noticed about my time and things I spent the most time on are prioritizing, or as a young freelancer, I should say, prioritizing my platform. So how I engage and approach people for jobs and for leads, because that's the most sustainable thing for your business as a, you know, like a self-employed owner, creative, however you want to say it. So recently, let's say I've been finding myself really struggling with, do I want to prioritize networking or do I want to prioritize rebuilding my platform so that it's up to date, or it is as up to date with, the work I've done, my philosophies, and, the things that I want to be working on? Or should I just focus on meeting people, getting engaged with the community so that I could find those opportunities when they come knocking? And that's really a point of contention. I find myself now, especially because, I don't want to say because if it's the economy or anything, but things are just topsy-turvy nowadays that you really don't, or I really don't know where to start or begin.
I would say my phase four is like pandemic and beyond. But
Yeah.
uh, so what I heard in there, which I think is really important, is that time is limited and you have to determine how you want to use it. So remind me after I go through my thoughts on time to tell to anecdote with this article I just read. But time has very much changed for me as a designer over 25 years. So when I started, no significant other, living at home. I lived in the suburbs, not the city. I was working for a startup of four. No one was creative. Um, most of the things that we do at present didn't even exist yet. And what I really found myself doing was I was almost working like 2 days at a time. I was working and then I would create something to get people who I admired or people who I wanted to jam with together. Probably 20 years ago, I started this thing called Owl Design Collective with 3 to 7 other rotating creatives, and we would show up around 8 p.m. and work until about 4 a.m. Sorry. And just every day, every time we would come in, we would just whatever our brains wanted to do or jam or just sit and talk. And it was really interesting sessions that we just came up with ideas and we would launch them all in one night. That crew has gone on to be amazing and working at amazing places. But the reason I was doing that was because I wasn't getting enough inspiration in my day job time. So I needed some other way to do that. That was when I was young. I totally feel like terrible being on like an interview and being like, now I'm in my mid 40s, life is different. But it is. I don't actually, when I was kind of young and hungry and going to these events and really trying to figure out how to network, I was wondering like, where is everybody from like 35 to 55? People are either like at the end of their career and they're coming back and they're 75 talking about, the olden days, or everyone is like 25. And that I couldn't realize or recognize why. And the reality is that life heavily takes over after that. So that initial time up front is really valuable in establishing your trajectory, where you're going to go, who you want to work with, who you know, because I can't work at 5:45 anymore. I have to pick up kids from preschool, or kids are throwing up, or it's a birthday party on Saturday that you have to go to. And so really the priority heavily shifts away from the 24/7 grind to, I want to make sure that the time that I'm putting in is really all quality. I want to make sure that if I am, 9 to 5, that every one of those minutes I'm thinking my best, I'm designing my best, I'm coordinating my best, I'm working my best. And I'll go back to say that there's a big difference between how we would all consider time as hand on mouse, which is when you're a freelancer, unless you're working on some sort of retainer where maybe hours don't matter or you're locked into this month, everybody on the outside always puts us in a box of 1 minute of hand on mouse is 1 minute of work. And time wise, that's not really how creatives work. The funny comparison is you watch Mad Men and you always wonder why is everybody sleeping on the couch at like 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m., 4 a.m., whatever. The reality is that creative is not linear, which time is. They don't work the same way. It takes time to have the right idea. It takes time to have bad ideas. It takes time to look at something and say, am I achieving this goal that was asked of me? And it's not minute by minute. When I'm really into something, I am drawing answers on like the shower door in Steam, like trying to lay out like this module has to be above this. Here's 50 logos that I just am drawing on the wall because I'm thinking rapidly, but that's at 10 o'clock. And what do you bill it? And the bullet point being like ideating in my shower. Like that's not how clients think that creatives work, but it really does engulf more than that time, because you have to think about these things and you also have to plan. Creative isn't like I can do my work today and I can know what's coming tomorrow and I know what's coming Thursday. They all relate to each other. So looping back to just time in general, I was reading an article this last week, which was about how do people who ultimately as they get older do the best for themselves. And I won't go into like the nitty gritty of the article, but almost all of the items were figuring out ways to make more time for themselves, which is not necessarily, well, it shouldn't be why someone starts a company, because you always want a great team. And for me, I'm a creative. I love being in the like mix. If we're doing a creative direction or art direction or design build, I'll be there. But there are definitely people who say, well, I'm going to just hire all the smartest people and best people, and they're going to lead and I'll follow. That's a great way to do it, but I still like being involved. And I don't think that the reasoning for that is going to be I'm trying to make more time for myself. It's probably more I want to work with the best people. But time is probably, for all of us, it's our most finite resource. So you always have that like paradigm of like time, money, quality, which is always like the designer's trifectas. Like, do you want it fast and bad? Do you want it? But there's definitely times with time where someone will come in and I'll know the right answer when they're explaining to me the creative problem. And then it's just about making it. But I think that comes with experience. So the more time spent helps me get there. I don't really see many surprises anymore. Like I would be very surprised if someone comes in with a project that's like, wow, I haven't seen this before. The reality is I've probably seen it all many times before. It's just unique for that particular client's needs, what the exact problem they're trying to solve. And then it's small refinements, but all of that plays back on experience, understanding the basics. All the time that I've either succeeded or failed in previous projects. So you really do have to put in all of that time. And there's nothing to say that 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, you think that something is the right answer and you spend whatever amount of time on it, and the partner you're working with doesn't see the same vision. So time is odd. Like, was that time valuable that you spent not getting the vision right? Or was it, how do you view it? Would a client view it as not valuable time because you didn't get the exact path that they were hoping? So that's very weird about the design space in general. Is I would much rather continue to know what is working and what isn't working, and I would consider all of that time to be super valuable. But creative is not a straight line like that, so there's
Mm.
always tweaks and fixes, and sometimes there's hard stops.
Yeah.
So that was like that was some thoughts on just time in general. Let's tie it in because we're kind of midpoint now. We're going to keep these at 30 minutes. What
Okay.
Let's tie it into what we do on a regular basis. So there were some sub questions in that initial. What are those?
Yeah. So having said, like time is, or having established that time is not linear and it works in ways in which we're not always in parallel to, I wanted to ask you, do you know to kind of lineate with time? When do you know, like, okay, I have a deadline for X client, for instance, but I also have these personal goals that I want to achieve in a certain amount of time. So, for instance, like redoing my portfolio, let's say,
Yeah.
like, how do I know when to lineate? This is sort of vague. It's a little difficult for me to contextualize because
Where do you
there's
spend
always
your
so much
time?
going on. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So it's probably going to be different for everybody, just like design paths are different for everybody, and what we all want is different for everybody. I happen to really like the business of design as much as I like design, and so
Hmm.
it, time spent with clients and those relationships and things are different than, which I would say might be more person to person skills versus just hard design skills. Like I only picked up Figma last year because I had used Adobe for 20 years. And so it took time to get around to my skills. I personally, so when you talk about like dividing time up, especially if it's a project, I I never ever wait until the middle or the end to try to make as much progress as possible. I try to make equal progress every single day. And some days I'll have breakthroughs and some days I won't. But there are definitely a lot of people who are like, I just need to sit down and crank this out. That's not how I plan. That might be how a ton of other designers do it. But I would much rather sit down and first have the brief and look for inspirations and know the directions that I want to go and have conversations with clients about, here's 5 things I found on the web. What emotions do these evoke in you without even spending any work? I can just ask those
Hmm.
questions. I think there's 2 things that I think are really important here. One is when to know you're behind or ahead, and when to know that you've spent enough time. I'll call it like what would it be called, like self realization or something like that, but like knowing I've spent 50 hours on this and I don't feel I'm nailing it. That is a skill that I think if you're working by the minute, there's no benefit to be faster or slower. I mean, it's like you'll get paid more
Agreed.
if you that sucks because it shouldn't be that way.
Hmm.
The more efficient and better work you give someone, the more value it should be. But there are a lot of people who will overspend time on things that don't add. Let's call it additive or subtractive. If it's additive to where you want to go, it's worth spending time on. If it's going to subtract away from where you want to go, it's not worth the time. And there's a lot of times with projects where someone will come to us and say, I only have 10 hours to work on this thing. And this is how far I need to go. And the advice I would give to the designer is you need to get the right idea out as much as you can in the 10 hours, knowing that nothing digital is final. We're not printing volumes of books that are stuck volume 1 where you won't be able to make edits down the road. And the other thing too for me is that I always love to use the data to actually tell if we're in the right path, and that doesn't happen until we launch something anyway. So we, I think what's really important with both of those is being able to realize I've spent enough time on this and I have really good ideas. Now I want to go talk to someone. Or I've spent a lot of time on this. I don't think I'm where I'm at. And before I spend more time on it, I need to go talk to someone and ask questions. That's a thing that I think is really important is nothing is crazier to me than a designer who doesn't ask as many questions as needed and waits on it. I would rather fail day one than fail day three, because otherwise I've just wasted time. I've wasted time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but the other question that you asked about, like, do I spend time on my portfolio? Do I spend time on finding clients, networking? All of it matters. I do I do think that we all hit a spot where our portfolios could just kind of tell our normal story and can stay put, but it takes years of knowing and being out there to have that ready. I don't have a I have a website up with Amy,
Mm-hmm.
who is another creative director, and it just talks about places we've spoken and a little bio about us and things like that. I don't have any work on that site, and neither does she. We both have our own work sites that kind of promote, but the reality of it is you don't necessarily need when you're looking to find freelance work and you're trying to find it through the design community, you need to show design for designers. When you are as a company, or you're trying to explain that not everything comes from one person, we're a crew, then it's designed for business, and your conversation really changes because there's a big difference between networking with designers and I mean, I would just consider that a lot of times my friend group or people I know from 20 plus years. On the business side, that's really hard because it's how do I get in front of people who actually need this in an effective way? I can't go door to door to businesses and just try to get something from them. That conversation could take 2 years. So it it's definitely both need to happen, but it kind of depends on like how much work you have right now and what's next. So I would, if I'm light, I'm jamming. And that's when BBG started. Our summers, we had no work for like the first 3 or 4 years in summer. It was when we finished up the beginning of the year work and didn't have the end of the year work yet. And everyone was kind of on 4th of July mentality. We weren't really known, we were smaller. And so it was like, all right, well, June, July, August, let's do something for us. And that's where Avondale Type Co., our type foundry, came from. That's where Millimeter, which was our photo studio, came from. It's kind of just now merged into BBG, but Avondale Type Co. is still out there. If we had time, I would be making fonts. If we had time, I would be thinking, like, talking about 2023 time. What could we try? An AI project? Can we try a DeFi project? Can we try a crypto project? Those things are hot. People are reaching out about it. We don't necessarily have anything locked, but might be cool for our team to try to mess around with it. So I would have to say, on the flip of it, would I want to spend this money with the team to experiment on it? And usually the answer is yes, which is why we have a lot of side projects. But sometimes it's not worth it. Like there might be time where a new tool comes out and it's like, we just need to do this in our day to day. And we can't spend time right now because we have a lot of client work sitting around and just trying to learn this new tool. We just need to learn it as we go. And then we can have like expertise sessions later.
Mm-hmm. As you were speaking on, the sudden um, realization came to me that when I was just starting out, like fresh out of school, didn't know anybody, didn't have a portfolio, didn't have anything to my name really, I realized that the things that I was working on and the people who I was catering to were those people who didn't speak the language of design or creatives. They were small business owners or frantic entrepreneurs that, like me, didn't have any money or just starting out. So that kind of language and my time spent working with those people and my portfolio and my surroundings were defined or sort of blended with them. And as I sort of grew into, who I want to become and who I am now, my I don't want to call them aesthetics, but my values, my philosophies, my perspectives have definitely changed and altered to kind of mix and blend to the things that I want to be prioritizing. So I think it's a good sign that you said that and I resonated with it because I've never heard that spoken in words and put into context. So that was really, really like
it's it's a
super,
yeah, it's important. I mean, you can find clients that do understand some of that design language, or that might even be what they do, but you might not speak the same exact design language. And it's then you're talking about something totally different, which is education, which we could do another time. We have 3 minutes left, so we're gonna keep to it.
yeah,
But you're spending a lot of time. A lot of designers have beautiful work and are
yeah,
just absolutely 10 out of 10 amazing aesthetics and just kill it on everything. Very difficult to explain the value of that to a company without being able to tie some sort of business metric to it outside of this is really nice looking work that I've done for other people. And
mhm,
so there's always that blend. And I think it's a really important skill for all designers is to empathize with all of our clients in terms of what they're trying to do and being able to look for those opportunities to say, I could spend my time on this, but I could also spend my time on this for you and it could have more value. We do that a lot when people call us and are like, I have a limited budget and here's what I want to do. And the what I want to do is the whole book. And
mhm,
it's like that is a that's $1 million project. What you really want to spend your time on is here because this is where you are as a company and this will give you the best ability to jump to the next phase. So I think that
yeah,
that's really important too when you're talking about clients' time. They we hear from a lot of people who say, I need to do A, B, C, D, and then we don't hear from them again for a year and a half. And they come back and say, hey, we're back. We still need to do A, B, C, D. And I look at them and I'm like, that was a year and a half. That's a long time for business and not making these tools. So
mhm,
time is both ways. I mean, there's a lot of value in getting this stuff done for people, but there's also a lot of value in having the skills, getting it done right, uh, everyone feeling good about what you want to launch, and then spending the time after to look at the results. So I think that there's something really good there. But based on what you were saying about when you were starting out and who you were catering to, I think designers are who really love the space. Like I said, I'm 25 years in. I am
mhm,
always out there looking for stuff. I'm always
yeah,
looking, whoa, this experience was really cool. This new design thing is happening. And I think that designers will always cater to other designers just because of our love of finding those things. But what and I have a designer on the BBG team right now who does a really good job of reminding me that we love this, but the clients should also have fun with this and love it. It's a
mhm,
transformation for them. We are helping them go from what they were able to look like and talk like and their product do into something totally different. And that would be like a project specific to BBG, but
mhm,
it's this shouldn't just be I need to make a website. This is I am going to tell a totally different story and experience to everybody who comes here from the day we launch forward. What do I want that to be? And that's really important. So and I'll caveat that, or I'll bookend that with one of my favorite projects of all time was a local heating and air conditioning company. And
Nice.
we have big clients, and we have
Mhm.
small clients, and we have regional, and we have national, and we have global. A person came through who I'd met through a social media seminar, and they said, I run a local family owned business. We're generation three. We have been doing this a while, and we need to rebrand. And I started looking at their stuff, and I was looking at it, and I was saying, where did this come from? Where did this come from? Where did this come from? But also give me anything historical you have about your dad running the business, or your grandpa running the business, or I want to know what happened in 1950. And so on our first meeting, the client came in with like a folder, a manila folder that was just filled with photographs. And we were looking at it, and we looked back at generation one, 1950, 1960, and the implementation of brand was like meticulously perfect and beautiful, because in 1950s you had everybody was sign painting, and the side of your building was perfectly painted, and you had a fleet of trucks and vehicles that were all perfectly painted by totally skilled craftspeople. And then we watched over time, and we're like, why did this happen? And the answer was, well, no one knew how to use computers, so we just used what was the clip art of closest to what we had. And so ultimately for that project, we just basically cracked open the history and digitized and updated a little bit, colors,
Mhm.
some execution. But we looked back at the stuff from 1950 saying, you should have never strayed from this. It was great. And so a couple of years after that, the family sold the company, and they sent us a couple pictures, and they're like, we are wrapping our history here. And they sent us some pictures of the building and a fleet of vehicles, and they're all meticulously painted with the brand in the 2020s. And the building
Yeah.
has the painted signage and everything. And they said, we feel so good putting this into someone else's hands, and it's our history. It's not going to go away if someone else is running it. And we felt so good. BBG felt so good that we were able to just preserve that brand for a next generation. And that all came out of history. So time, even, other ways for the client, just kind of looping it all back, was clients have time, clients have history, clients serious popping in. But it's really valuable to look at the time that clients have spent on this stuff too, because it could be their whole family timeline of the past 50 years or 100 years, or these there can have been really amazing things that happened as partners have kind of transferred between phases, the pre-digital, the digital, and then the kind of the post-pandemic. So I will cap it there. Do you have any last thoughts to wrap up about time with? And then otherwise, we are session one nailed.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, story and explaining your process. And, I was delighted to hear that because I had a very similar pro bono project I did that turned out similar, which I won't go into detail, maybe next episode or interview, whatever we choose to
We can
call it.
make episodes.
But no, yeah, we can do it whenever.
This
But
is
yeah, I
episode
just wanted
one.
to, yeah, just wanted to also bookend it with saying that, time has always been a daunting thing to manage. However, if you view it as a sort of, um, man, like an asset instead of something to conquer, then I think it's more approachable and it's more manageable for me. And speaking to you now, I feel a little bit more confident about what I can sort of ascertain from managing my time properly instead of worrying about where my time has been spent on already, I think. And that's a really great lesson, I think.
I think drive and hunger is great, but also eliminating that worry because we all have limited time to get where we want to go. So time really important, and we could talk about it for another 10 hours, but we will wrap here. So if anyone is watching this, thank you so much for listening in for the 30 minutes at 35 now. But if you want to reach out to either of us, we will maybe make some sort of graphic that goes at the end of this or post it with wherever we post this. So on to the next topic, topic 2, which we don't have planned yet, but that will happen next week, and hope everybody will join us and listen in. And one thought that I had about this is if anyone wants to be a potential third point of view or has specific comments, please reach out to us, because if we do more than this and people want to be it could be full spectrum of where you are in your career, junior, mid, senior, retired. It would be interesting to have kind of a third guest on each one. So if you have interest, reach out to us, and thank you so much, and have a great, well, for us it's Friday, but have a great day for whatever day you're watching this.